Okay, let's get on our way, yeah. It's frickin' Tuesday. 4 more days, ladies and gentlemen. 4 more days. This is a countdown. You know, this just makes things go way slower than what they should. The fact that I'm counting down every single day means this is going to be the longest week ever. On frickin' Tuesday, it's going to be the longest week ever. But anyway, we're off again, headed to the job, headed to the job. And being that it's Tuesday, yesterday, of course, Monday Night Football, Miami Dolphins, Pittsburgh Steelers played each other with the ever-surviving Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers won. Cool for them. They'll probably make it to the playoffs and lose in the first round. And then everybody will want to fire Mike Tomlin once again for the upcoming NFL year. But here's what I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about this so much, about football or sports, not just football. Football is my favorite sport, but in general, sporting allegiances, fan allegiance to what is your team that you must root for? What is the team that you must support? Who are the players that you support or must support? Those types of things. And the reason why I bring this up, I am a lifelong, diehard Dallas Cowboys fan. I was 10 years old, roughly, maybe 11. I probably would have been 11 years old, maybe, when they went to their first Super Bowl of the 90s, which would have been the 1992 season. So I was like prime formative years for developing a sports fandom as almost a teenager, just a couple of years shy of that. And then, of course, they won again in 1993. And then they skip a year, 1994, they lose. And of course, that's when Barry Switzer took over from Jimmy Johnson. But they come back and they win the Super Bowl again in 1995. So in a span of 4 years, I saw the Dallas Cowboys, which I lived in the Dallas area, win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. And that was it. Like, I was hooked. I'm a lifelong Dallas Cowboys fan. I grew up watching Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Deion Sanders, all those guys, Larry Allen, Nate Newton, and those guys just absolutely dominate teams. And it was like the greatest thing in the world to me, and I was hooked. But one of the teams that existed in the 90s around my area were the Houston Oilers. I grew up remembering the Houston Oilers being a team and having Warren Moon as their quarterback. And they were a decent team. They went to a Super Bowl, I think in the late 80s. But they lost. I might be wrong about that. I think they lost to the San Francisco 49ers. But I bring this up because the Houston Oilers, they moved. They became what is now the Tennessee Titans. They originally were moved to Nashville temporarily and were like the Nashville Oilers or something like that, or the Tennessee Oilers. But anyway, they are now what is considered the Tennessee Titans. So my question was always, if you were a Houston Oilers fan back then and your team ups and moves and becomes this team in Tennessee, as a fan of the Houston Oilers, are you now a fan of the Tennessee Titans? Should you be a fan of the Tennessee Titans? Or should you just have the option? I mean, you do have the option, but should you just choose a different fan to become a different team to become a fan of, maybe the Dallas Cowboys or another local team, if there is one? And my feeling was always, especially in the case of the Houston Oilers, because now, I don't know how many years ago this was, but now there's a new Houston NFL team, the Houston Texans. And now they're not new, but they've been around for, probably a decade now. But my feeling has always been, if I'm a fan of the Houston Oilers, a new team comes up, say the Houston Texans, that replaces the team that I was a fan of. Like, I'm probably going to be a fan of the Houston Texans. I'm not going to be a fan of the Tennessee Titans or whatever they are now. That's what they are now. And I'm just like, the way sports are now, people switch allegiances all the time. And this kind of goes back to like when the New England Patriots went on that amazing run and won a gajillion Super Bowls in a few years. And everybody miraculously became a New England Patriots fan. And now that they're not winning Super Bowls anymore, everybody became a Kansas City Chiefs fan out of nowhere. And now it looks like they're going to have an off year, so they're not winning Super Bowls. So now the next thing is going to come up, so on and so forth. So it's like, I feel like fan allegiances just don't really exist like they used to, for sure. Like, take for instance, the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns were a team. They moved to Baltimore, became the Baltimore Ravens, and then they brought back the Cleveland Browns. So I feel like that is what should have happened with the Houston Oilers. The Houston Oilers were a football team. They moved to Tennessee, became the Tennessee Titans. So when when the city was like, okay, you know what, let's have a football team again. And they came up with they did this whole thing where, hey, they let the fans kind of choose on different names that they wanted the team to be. And the Texans was the team that won out. But I'm like, it should be the Houston Oilers. There should not be a Houston Texans team. It should be the Houston Oilers again. Because that's exactly what they did with the Cleveland Browns. They moved, became Baltimore Ravens. When they were like, hey, let's put a team back in Cleveland, it was just the Cleveland Browns. And there was no deal about it. It was just, it is what it is. It's the Cleveland team. They're going to be the Cleveland Browns. I feel like that is exactly what should have happened with the Houston Oilers. They should still be the Houston Oilers with them powder blue logos and the white jerseys. They were pretty clean back in the day, and they cleaned out. And I don't think the Tennessee Titans ever when they do like the throwback week in the NFL and teams wear like their old uniforms. I don't think Tennessee ever wears a Houston Oilers uniform because that just wouldn't make sense. But the University of Houston, their college football team has kind of adopted the color scheme. So every now and again, the University of Houston Cougars, I think they're the Cougars, they will wear a powder blue logoed jersey and helmet and pants with the white colorway, and it looks so awesome. It's such a classic and clean look, and it just, when you look at the Houston, Texas color scheme and their logo and things like that, you're like, oh man, this looks like a creative team in Madden. It really does. Like, the logo just looks like a generic JPEG. The colors are just so contrasting. They don't really look good together. And just, it's a shame that there's no Houston Oilers team anymore. Whether they're good, whether you like them or not, like that color scheme, that logo, that identity is kind of iconic, and it's so classic now. And it's like, that's what should exist right now. But I don't know. I'm a lifelong Cowboys fan. I will never ever support wholeheartedly like another team. Like, I have my backup teams that I support. I was born in Ohio. So because I was born in Ohio, I support the Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I'll never support them over the Dallas Cowboys. Like, if the Cowboys play the Bengals or the Browns, I'm always going to go for the Cowboys. I'm never going to go for the Bengals or the Browns. But if the Bengals or the Browns are just playing a random team that I don't really care about, or that's going to benefit the Cowboys, like let's say the Eagles or the Giants, I'm going for, of course, the Bengals and Browns. And when Joe Burrow took the Bengals to the Super Bowl a few years back, I was definitely pulling for them in the Super Bowl because that's one of my backup teams. But if it was the Cowboys and Bengals in the Super Bowl, of course, I'm going for the Cowboys. No questions asked. But with that said, being the Cowboys situation that it is, where now it's been 30 long years, 30 years since the Cowboys have won a Super Bowl. Let's do the math. It was 1995 was the last season the Dallas Cowboys won a Super Bowl. Not only won it, but make it to one. They haven't been back to a Super Bowl since the 1995 season. So 95 to 2005 is 10 years. 2015 is 20 years. 2025 is 30 years. So now it's been essentially 31 years since the Cowboys have last made it to a Super Bowl. I've seen a lot of different teams, iterations of the Dallas Cowboys come through the area. Some good, some bad. I got to see all of Troy Aikman's career. I got to see all of Tony Romo's career. I am now witnessing all of Dak Prescott's career. And it's so very interesting in that Troy Aikman is like considered the GOAT. There's Troy Aikman and Roger Staubach. Those are the two GOATs. Staubach was from the 60s and 70s. And Aikman, of course, from the late 80s and through the 90s into the early 2000s. I think he retired in like year 2000. But those are the two GOATs, the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. And, I would argue Aikman is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, period. But, of course, when you compare their statistics to Romo and Dak, they look god-awful. Like, Romo became the all-time passing record holder for the Dallas Cowboys in pretty much everything. Attempts, completions, touchdowns, he had all the records. Blew Aikman out the water, blew Staubach out the water quite easily. And now Dak has come along and he's doing the exact same thing to Romo that Romo did to Aikman. He's blowing all the stats out of the water, touchdowns, completions, attempts, all of that stuff. And it's just the nature of the sport now where, of course, passing is the main focus. And back in the day, back in the 90s, we had Emmitt Smith, and he was just running they were just running the football all over the place. And Troy Aikman, as good as he wasn't asked to do anything extraordinary except deliver the ball to some of the best wide receivers in the game. So it's quite interesting to look back and be like, wow, this team in hindsight was so good. It was so entertaining. But statistically, compared to modern day iterations of the Dallas Cowboy or any NFL team, like statistically speaking, they were trash. And that's hard to grapple with because you could never convince me the Dallas Cowboys of the Dak Prescott era or the Tony Romo era could ever even come close to competing with the Cowboys from those early 90s to mid 90s teams where they were winning all the Super Bowls. But statistically on paper, they would probably blow them out the water. So, all that to say, throughout these 30 years of seeing the Dallas Cowboys be terrible, good, to pretty darn good, but never still having success in the playoffs, winning 13, 14 games and still not being able to win a playoff game for crying out loud, my fandom has changed. I want to say it's decreased, but it's definitely changed. Like, I will not make my Sunday routine around what time the Dallas Cowboys are playing. I will watch every single game, but I will not invest every second of my time and energy into that game, especially if they are losing and it looks like they're about to lose. I'll go ahead and turn it off in the third quarter if they're completely blown out and there's no chance of them winning. I have no problem turning it off and going and doing something else. If it looks like they're playing like garbage, I won't watch it. Where, of course, if I was younger, I would have watched every second until that last second went off the clock, hoping, praying, wishing that there's still just a glimmer of hope of them somehow winning the game if they're losing. But now I can't invest that sort of time, energy into it because seeing so much over so many years and seeing them never really put anything meaningful together, I'm like, it's just not worth it. Once they get to the playoffs and have a playoff run, then I'll be invested. I'll be locked into those playoff games like, oh my God, we're going to win. We have an opportunity. We have a chance no matter what. That will come back. But like during the regular season, if they're playing hot garbage, I'm not going to watch. Like there were some years where they only won like 4 or 5 games. And I'm like, I'm not watching this entire season. I'm not going to keep turning on every single week when they're clearly not a talented team. They're not going to win anything. So I'll skip a game here and there if they're that bad. Like this year, they're like right at 500. They're not making the playoffs anymore. Last Sunday's game where they lost, that took them out of playoff contention for the most part. So I'm probably not going to watch the remaining 3-4 games or however many's left. I think there's 3 games left. Yeah, there's 3 games left. I'm probably not going to watch all of them. I might watch one, maybe 2 of them or parts of them, because there's no point in me investing my time and effort into something that I know isn't going to pay off for me. And it's just like, dang. My sports, my football, diehard fandom has changed over the years. It's interesting how it's changed and how it's developed the older I get. And I wonder if it's just a matter of getting older and not having an interest in it like I would have when I was a kid. I mean, that might be a part of it. Like even jerseys. Like I used to, if you go in my closet now, I probably have maybe 7 or 8 jerseys from throughout the years, from different players. I know I have a Dak Prescott jersey. I think that is the only jersey that I have that is of a player that's still on the team. I bought that like when he first took over for like Tony Romo. And that's the last jersey I bought was a Dak Prescott jersey when he kind of first took over, which was quite a few number of years ago, which is like 10 years ago at this point. But there's another reason why I would never ever buy, like I won't buy another jersey of a player, no matter how good they are, no matter what they do. And it's not because like they're going to not be on a team for a while or there's no point in it. The reason why I would never ever buy a jersey of an NFL jersey ever again is because they've changed the way that they make them. For years, forever, all my life growing up until I want to say it was 3, maybe 4 years now ago that they changed this. There was like different tiers of jersey. You had like the regular jersey, like the cheap replica jersey. You had the replica jersey, and it was like $90 to $100. And it was just like, it looked like the jersey. It had all the same colors, all the same logos, but everything was just printed on there. Like the numbers were just printed on there. The stars were printed on there. And it kind of looked cheap, but it did the job. Then there was like the next tier, which would have been like $150, which was like, it looked like a authentic jersey, but it was still a replica. I forget, there's like a specific name for these tiers. I can't remember what they are anymore. But this was like the next tier up. And the names on the back, the numbers, all the logos, they were sewn on. They were stitched on. They weren't just printed on like the cheaper jersey. So it looked more like a real jersey. And then the next level above that, which was like $200-300, was like the actual authentic jerseys that they would wear on the field. You can still get that authentic jersey, I believe. And there's still 3 tiers of jerseys, but they're exactly the same now. So they stopped manufacturing the jerseys for sale that have sewn on numbers, sewn on nameplates, and sewn on patches and logos. They stopped doing that, but they're still charging, or last time when I first found out that they made this change, they were still charging different prices for the different tiers of jerseys, even though they were pretty much exactly the same. Everything was just printed on. And I'm like, what? You're charging me the same amount of money for a jersey that everything is printed onto it. The numbers, the nameplate, all the logos are just printed on there, like screen printed or whatever, pressed on there. Where just the year before, I would have bought that jersey at that same price and the numbers would have been sewn on. There would have been stitching all over all the NFL logos, all the Cowboys logos, the stars. They would have all been stitched on there. Not hand stitched, but they would have still been sewn on there. So it would have looked good. It would have looked like a real thing. And they don't make those anymore. And I'm like, what? I am not. So when I found that out, I was like, oh my God. Because I was looking to buy a new jersey a few years back. And I went to, they have these Dallas Cowboys official fan shops. So I went to the fan shop, one of the fan shops, and I was like, hey, I asked the guy, I was looking at all the jerseys and they all looked the same. I was like, hey, where are the jerseys with the sewn on patches and numbers? And he was like, oh, they don't make those anymore. They stopped making them just because the process was too long. It was too expensive. So they just print everything on now. I'm like, what? You want me to pay the same amount of money for less craftsmanship, for less quality of a product? I'm like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. So a little bit of my childhood is gone because I don't think I'll ever be able to buy another jersey again. Now, with that being said, I think you could probably still get a custom-made jersey. Like, you can go online and get whatever name you want and whatever number you want put on a jersey, and you might be able to get a sewn-on version of that, which I know is already more expensive to get a custom jersey. So to that, though, there's this company out there called Mitchell and Ness, I think is the name of the sports company, but they still produce in small quantities, but you can still find them in stores. Of like old replica vintage jerseys. So like you can go get a Troy Aikman jersey that looks like the real deal jersey. Everything's sewn on. It looks beautiful, but it's going to be like $300-400. It's crazy expensive. So one day I might get a jersey. Those are the two things I've been considering. Getting one of those old replica jerseys from a player from back in the day that I really loved, or getting like a custom made one with like my name on the back of it. Just so I'm like, because again, you might buy a jersey on a player, like let's say Micah Parsons. Let's say I bought a jersey last year of Micah Parsons because he's an absolute dog and he's amazing and he's great. And then bam, the very next year, this year, he's traded to a different team. And now I just bought a jersey. I spent $150, $200 on a jersey for a player that's now gone. So it's hard to invest in a jersey when you know players don't stick around. Like back in the day, when I bought like a Troy Aikman jersey, there was no free agency. So players didn't switch teams very often. So you got to live with that jersey for a lot of that player's career until they retired, got hurt, or did finally say, hey, I don't want to play on this team no more. Get me out of here. So yeah, that is my sad story about my childhood slowly disappearing throughout the years through sports, with the changing of teams, the changing of the landscape of fan allegiances, the changing of the jerseys, the changing of the players, the business dealings of it all. It's no longer like a sport anymore. It's like it's become a business, and when things become a business, of course, money becomes the priority, and that kind of ruins everything. That ruins the childlike feeling of it, because now it's just a business set up to make money. It is what it is. It's still entertaining. I'm still going to watch, but it's just not that same good old feeling that it used to have when I was a little kid. I was going to also bring up the whole thing with the Ford thing, but of course the wife isn't here, and I kind of wanted her to talk about it too, or for her to hear about it. I kind of talked to her about it this morning. I guess I'll just bring it up for the sake of bringing it up. I looked into it a little bit. I didn't go, this is the thing about me. I love conspiracy theories. I love those type of kind of interesting historical things that don't really get mentioned a lot. But I'm not going to invest a lot of time in researching that stuff really either, because there's just so many different things going on. It's like you could get caught up on whatever it is you want to get caught up on, and there's just so many different things to get caught up on and to be upset about and to be pissed off about. It's just not worth the time, energy, and effort to be stuck on those things. So long story short, so it was about the Ford Motor Company. Yeah, it was the Ford Motor Company, but the Dodge brothers, I forget their names, but their last name was Dodge, and they were brothers. They weren't the Dodge Motor Company at the time. They were actually minority shareholders in the Ford Motor Company. And the Ford Company as a business was a corporation. Of course, they had investors. The two Dodge brothers were two of those minority investors, even though when you say minority, you think a small portion, but even that is still quite a large portion compared to, like, just say a random person having a share or two. So the Ford guy, he was like, you know what, man, we need to. He was trying to, if you Google it, it'll say something to the effect of, he was trying to do something for the societal good. In other words, he wanted to run his business for the good of his employees, for the good of his customers, and also, of course, for the good of himself. So he was trying to make the process of building cars cheaper, which in turn would have made the price of those vehicles cheaper, and which would also in turn hopefully be able to allow more money to be given to his employees for the work that they were doing. So he was trying to do something for the good of society as a whole, for everybody involved. The two Dodge brothers were like, no. We should be doing good for us as shareholders. So the two Dodge brothers took Ford to court, and it went to the Michigan Supreme Court, and they were suing on the account that the Ford Motor Company was a corporation, and that a corporation's duty and responsibility is to do what is best for their shareholders, and not for the customers, not for its employees, but for their shareholders. And somehow, some way, the two Dodge brothers won that court case, that Supreme Court case, and that changed essentially the American economic landscape forever. So that if you are any of these major corporations, their sole responsibility, by penalty of law, they are to do what is best for their shareholders, not for their customers, not for their employees, for their shareholders. That is super interesting. That is a whole intertwined, never-ending rabbit hole that you can dive into and kind of understand why businesses operate the way that they do now, especially those large ones such as Walmart, Target, Amazon, all those companies. And you're like, well, why the heck are they doing this? This can't be good for business. It's not about doing what's good for business. It's about doing what's good for their shareholders. So keep that in mind next time you're like, hey, you know what? We should really go boycott this company. Well, you can do that, but just know their goal, their responsibility is to take care of their shareholders, not their customers, nor their employees. But yeah, that is the whole situation summed up into a very, very small and poorly understood explanation. So keep that in mind. Go look it up yourself. It's very interesting. But yeah, that's about all I got to say for today. I'm getting close to work. The inevitable work day looms above my head. But yeah, have an amazing day. Be easy. Enjoy yourselves.